on to the general election. We'll get into the primary results and the paths ahead, including more than one historic first for the state, a little later in the show with the Globe's Joan Vanocchi and the Bay State Banner's Yahoo Miller. But first, to the winner of what may have been the most bruising of yesterday's contests for Suffolk County District Attorney. Over the last several weeks, both candidates faced significant controversy. In early August, the Boston Globe piece raised questions about why interim DA Kevin Hayden had not pursued charges against a white transit cop who was accused of pulling a gun on an Hispanic black man during a traffic dispute, then lying about it. Then a couple of weeks later, the Globe again reported that Boston City Councilor Ricardo Arroyo was twice investigated for possible sexual assault back in 2005 and 2007. Arroyo denied any wrongdoing, accused Hayden of leaking the details to the media. Now the ballots have been counted. Arroyo is conceded, and without a Republican challenger, Hayden is on his way to a full term. Kevin Hayden joins me. Congratulations, I think, Kevin Hayden, for becoming the permanent DA. Thanks so much for being here.
Let's hope so. Thank you, Jim. Good
I didn't mean permanent, but a full term, I should say.
You.
So why'd you win this? Why do you think the voters chose you over Ricardo Arroyo yesterday?
I think ultimately the voters looked at the two of us and looked at who has the experience and the qualifications to do the job. And
sorry, go ahead.
So, and I do. I'm built for this. 25 years of experience as a prosecutor, as a criminal defense attorney, and as having run a state agency previously.
But you can't deny that some of your vote was a vote against Arroyo because of these charges, not so much for you. You would agree with that, wouldn't you?
Well, I don't know if I can get in the minds of every single voter. I know that the majority of voters spoke and that they chose to elect me. So,
you know, it seems to me, if I may be presumptuous, you have two tasks ahead of you. I guess they'd probably be intertwined. One, to do the job, obviously, and two, to convince the public that they should trust the doer of the job after all the headaches you've had to confront on both sides. You agree with that, I assume, do you?
I do. I look forward to the opportunity to do just that.
So how do you restore trust? I assume you'd agree that a vote count doesn't magically make issues that concern voters disappear. How do you do this trust restoration thing, District Attorney?
And I addressed that last night, and I said that I hope that for those who voted for me, thanks for the support, and for those who didn't, I hope that I can work tirelessly every day to trust and earn their support by doing my job. I'm not a politician, but I am a public servant, and I take that very seriously, and I take that to heart. And I think that when the voters see that I am just that, a public servant, that will gain that trust.
Well, you're a politician and a public servant. I mean, you may not like it, but when you have to run for office, by definition, you become a politician. I want to I know you don't want to dwell on the past, but the issues are not totally resolved. His campaign, Arroyo's campaign, I think I would argue, is brought down by these sexual assault charges. He's accused first you, and then your driver, who had been a detective, a cop on the case, 15 years ago, of having leaked this information. You denied having any involvement with it. Have you spoken to Detective Williams about whether or not he had any involvement in it?
I've spoken to him, but not about this particular issue, no.
Why would you not ask him if he was the leaker of this information?
Well,
he was involved in the case and back in the aughts, correct?
He was. I know from talking with others, he didn't have any recollection of the case whatsoever. So.
And one other thing on this, on the Arroyo situation, he said that an independent investigation was appropriate. Why would you not agree to an independent investigation so there's no trace of, well, this is Hayden protecting his you-know-what? Let an independent force come in. If you're right, clear the detective, and then you move on. Why wouldn't that be a wise route for you at this stage?
Well, I know he's talking about bringing ethics charges, and if he does, then we'll let that take its course. I'm confident. We cannot release sexual assault files and information in our files ever. It's a matter of law. We can't do so. We never have, and we didn't in this case.
But he's not asking you to release files. He's asking you to investigate the leaks, and they did come from somewhere, obviously. Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously.
I don't know where they came from, but I don't believe they came from our office.
You know, stepping back from Arroyo specifically, these charges against him happened, I'll do my math, 17 and 15 years ago when he was a teenager. Take Arroyo out of it. There's a kid who's 17 years ago engaged in sexual misconduct. He owns up to it. That was not the situation here. He denies it. He owns up to it. The little I know you, you seem to be a second chance kind of guy. What happens to that kid who did some pretty horrible things as a kid when he's an adult, if he or she, whoever, has had a clean record in the intervening years? Do they deserve a second chance? Can they be elected to office?
They certainly can. Absolutely. Everyone deserves a second chance. People make mistakes, particularly when they're younger. I've always been a firm believer in the power of redemption and second chances. It's a matter of owning up to those mistakes and those responsibilities first and foremost. Denial doesn't get anyone anywhere, but with acceptance of responsibility and with moving forward, absolutely.
Talk about your situation just for a minute. And again, another Globe report. I described it a couple of minutes ago. The Globe reported, after having spoken to the lawyer for this transit cop, that your first assistant said that there was, quote, no aptitude to prosecute. You denied that, then said there was a misunderstanding, that the prosecution is not closed, but it is open. Do you have any regrets at all about how you handled either the case itself or the controversy surrounding the case?
No, I don't. The case was always open. I think there was a misunderstanding about that comment, and it was obviously misconstrued by the attorney who said otherwise in an affidavit, but no, I don't.
You know, one of the things that drives me nuts, by the way, I should say, and this is not just a function of you, when you're a public official, use the term before public servant, my attitude is when a public servant decides to do that thing and ask the public to support him, when there's an issue that matters to the voters, they have an obligation to talk to responsible media. And by the way, I really appreciate you being here.
Sure.
Neither you or Mr. Mullen, who was involved in the situation, you both declined to speak to the Boston Globe during this initial writing. Why would you not speak to them and answer every single question they have?
Yeah, we did speak to the Globe.
Both of you did?
We both did.
Okay,
Yep.
My apologies. Let's talk about you for your campaign. Well, you're not your campaign, but your service as district attorney. The media basically settled on describing you as a centrist status quo candidate. I know you bristle at that. Is that fair? You do, I can see.
I do, yeah.
Why are you not that centrist status quo candidate?
Because I've never taken a back seat to anyone when it comes to criminal legal reform. Everything that we talk about now, when we talk about those words, criminal legal reform, I staked my entire career on. Whether it's juvenile diversion, intervention and prevention strategies, working vigorously on reentry and returning citizens to the community, the cornerstones of criminal legal reform that are so now universally accepted, I staked my entire career on. And when I did it, quite frankly, people looked at me like I was crazy. And I've had people comment in that regard. They go, wow, all these things that you did and that you championed and that you stood for back when you were an assistant district attorney under Ralph and Dan Conley.
Ralph Martin and Dan Conley.
Ralph Martin and Dan Conley. Now people accept as good and just principles. And it's amazing that you took a lot of hits back then for it.
But, you know, if I can focus on something people do know about, you know this, a couple of years ago, the ACLU of Massachusetts did a campaign, What a Difference a DA Makes, and found that a huge percentage of people didn't know they're elected, didn't know what their jobs were, didn't know they had discretion around prosecution. I would bet if you stopped 100 people in Suffolk County and said, what did Rachel Rollins run on? She ran on some number of crimes, 15 minor crimes that would not be prosecuted. You didn't endorse that. You say you've told me repeatedly in the past you think operationally you're doing the same thing. You're just not for. Is that a fair statement as to where you are?
Somewhat, yeah.
Well, explain what is fair.
Well, I think that we're focused on those same low-level offenses in terms of diversion and alternatives to prosecution. We're just looking at it on a case-by-case basis, looking at the individuals involved in those cases, and not just the person that's charged, but also the victims and the community that's involved as well, in order to decide what's just and appropriate, and not focus so much on charges and what percentage of charges we're not going to prosecute.
But you would agree that that worked for her. The study that came out on this showed that in terms of recidivism and things like that, that was a success, correct?
I don't know the answer to that question. Some claim that it did work. I think there's a lot of cases that we don't know what happened with them when it comes to them being not prosecuted, whether they came back or not. I don't know.
Okay, so for the average voter, whether they voted for you or not last night, what are the 2 or 3 things you want them to stick in their mind, just like I think most of them have stuck that Rollins list in their head? What do you want them to know that are going to be the guiding, not principles, that's too broad, the guiding mechanics of a full term of Kevin Hayden as Suffolk County DA?
Sure. It really comes down to one. I mean, there's other things that we're going to focus on, whether it's services over sentences in the opioid epidemic, or whether it's gun cases and reducing gun violence in our neighborhoods. But at the end of the day, I want all of our community to know that we are going to be truly engaged with our community like never before. We are going to get involved in intervention and prevention strategies in close collaboration with our community partners like never before. That's why I've committed to a community engagement team, not just one community engagement person. Hired two so far. We're already looking at other people that will be added to that team. And we're going to cover Suffolk County like the waters cover the sea in terms of working with our community partners, the ones that care about public safety, the ones that care about our young people and making sure that they're on the right path, the ones that care about our streets being safe. Whether it's our churches, whether it's our 501c3 secular organizations that are committed to these matters, whatever it may be, we're going to engage with them. We're going to return to community policing and community prosecution like never before. That's going to include the police department. I'm excited about Commissioner Cox. I know he shares my heart around this. And I think that's where we're going to really make the difference.
Did you work with him when you were doing what you were doing and he was here through the beginning of his career?
I knew of him, not closely, but we've known each other for quite some time.
Okay, let's end with a political question, even though you say you're not a politician. Yeah. Mayor Wu didn't endorse you. Mm-hmm. She endorsed Arroyo and then unendorsed Arroyo after these things happened. Do you worry about a working relationship with the mayor of the major part of Suffolk County when she was with another candidate?
Not at all.
Have you spoken to her since your...
We spoke today.
How'd that go?
She called to congratulate me. It went well. It was not a long conversation because we intend to get together again and talk some more. But I respect her. I know what a good leader she is. And I know that she shares the same heart and passion for our city as I do. And we're committed to working together to do what's best for the people in Suffolk County.
Kevin Hayden, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Hope you spend a lot of time in that seat in the future. Be well.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.
Kevin Hayden.